Hello and welcome to Sasha Says. I'm Sasha Gardner and I'm so excited to have you here with me as I embark on this new chapter. In this podcast, I'm speaking to incredible people who will be sharing their stories and expertise, and I hope that will help inspire you and help you on your journey. Please also don't forget to press the follow button, like, comment, and share with your friends. It's a small thing for you, but a huge thing for us, and it really does help. Hello, Hayley. I want to say a huge thank you for coming on today's show. I am beyond excited to speak with you about your incredible story. I would like to jump straight in and talk about your microtia. So I know that you were born with bilateral microtia, and for the purpose of the viewers who are listening, bilateral microtia is both ears missing from birth, and what your journey has been with bilateral microtia.
Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, we can totally just jump right in. But yes, I have bilateral microtia, so on both sides, and I wear a bone-anchored hearing aid to help me here.
And you had bilateral microtia from birth, and you went through school, and I would just love to know more about that experience from growing up. So what your story is, what your experiences were like, if you were bullied, how that was for you.
For sure. So yeah, I was born with this, and growing up through school, there was definitely periods where it was tougher than others. And I think once I'd reached like 8 to 10-ish, I think you become more aware of your differences. I think like amongst a crowd, I think that's when you become a bit more like self-aware. And for myself, of course, to be like physically different, and a difference that is like a bit uncommon. So I think there was like an extra emphasis on like she's really different. So it definitely got a bit more difficult by like 8 to 10-ish. And school was definitely like it was tricky. And I think when you know you're different and you internalize it a little bit, you become the quiet kid, and I think things bother you more. And I definitely, without realizing, I think I took on that role of being like the different kid and like being other, and kids definitely like were not the loveliest about it. But you know what? I grew up funny because of it. I think it gave me a funny personality.
Did you experience a lot of bullying at school?
Yeah, it was weird. Like I'd go through phases, and I felt like there was just an emphasis on like kids just felt I was so different. I felt like they had no problem making it very clear. Like it was weird. Like kids like there was definitely like chunks of time when it was definitely worse. Or it becomes where it was like not even in school, like it'd be in like summer camp, for example, where it was like kids just like it was weird. It was a difference that people were not used to seeing, and they just reacted often really strangely. It was a weird experience looking back on now, because I would like to think maybe kids aren't like that anymore,
I
but
think kids can just be really mean in general.
what do you mean? And like sometimes it was like okay, and I think once I was in school and like I had like a few core friends, that definitely helped things. But there was a lot of periods where it wasn't that case, and obviously like kids are just like mean growing up, and there were definitely a lot of circumstances up until like in high school things had calmed down, I think just because I isolated myself a lot. But in like grade school, kids were like not they didn't make it easy for sure.
Did you wear your hair up at school, or did you wear your hair down?
When I was really young, I would wear my hair up. And my mom and I talk about this actually, because there was like a clear switch from grades like from I guess kindergarten to like grade 3. I went to one school, and kids were either they weren't like aware of my difference, that it was something to like address, but and it was never treated differently in those initial years. And then I went to a new school come grade 4, and this like was a psychological switch. My mom even said, she's like, once you hit that age, like you got sad.
What
Like
age was that?
I think probably around like maybe 10 or 11. And it was at this new school, and it for some reason the kids were just like immensely unkind. Like they made it very clear that I was very different. And then I stopped wearing my hair up from then on. Like from then till university age, essentially, which is when I started wearing prosthetic ears, which we'll get to. I would like tug my hair down if the wind blew. Like, God forbid anybody saw that I had this difference about me. Like, I hit this one age when I hit this new school, and it was like no more hair up ever. Like it didn't matter how hot it was, didn't matter what we were doing, gym class, summertime, like hair was always down and constantly tugging at it. So no
And
one.
that's so sad because you embraced yourself, and then because of other people making you feel a certain way, you then adjusted yourself,
Yeah.
which is just such a shame. And I just feel people should just really, I mean, I know that children are children and they're just really, they're really mean about everything. So, but it's a shame that you were made to feel that way. Hayley, I wanted to ask, from a hearing point of view, because I know that you said you've got a bone anchored hearing aid. Have you got a bone anchored hearing aid on both sides, or is it just one side?
It's just on the one side. So what had happened was I was actually speaking to my parents about this last night to kind of remember everything that had happened. So I got the bone anchored hearing aid. I believe we started the process when I was also maybe around like 8 to 10.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, because it took a while to get it. There's the implant, and then there's the skin graft. Like there's like a few steps to the procedures. And we had done the one, and I was already having kind of like a negative reaction to it physically in terms of
What do
like
you mean?
my body essentially was kind of like rejecting it. Like my skin was always trying to grow over it, and because you're so small and you're growing, like your skull is growing. So I think we were just trying to like understand how physically my body would react to it, because I had to go in for revision surgeries to kind of fix what was happening as I was growing. And along with that, I was also a kid. Like you're running around, you're like knocking it off. I remember there was times where I would like take the bus, for example, and like you knock your head on the mirror, or not the mirror, the window, and it would go flying. And there was always like, you were always so aware of it. And in gym class, it was a nightmare because it's like kids are throwing things, and like there's always, you have to be so aware of it, and it's delicate. So as a kid, that was a bit tricky. So we stuck with just the one, which has its pros and cons. Like I mentioned, it will either get infected or it had to go in for these revision surgeries. There's always a bit of like a physical aspect that's maybe a little bit unpleasant, but it's obviously so worth it. I'm able to hear, like I'm
Has
able to
that
hear,
really
but
has
sorry.
that really helped your hearing, having the bone anchored hearing aid?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so thankful for it. I didn't mean to get the negative all out of the way. Like
We, on this platform, we have to be honest because that's what we're here for. So,
yeah.
there's always a risk. I have read about bone anchored hearing aids that there is a risk of infection, but the reward is so much higher given the fact that it helps your hearing. So,
Yeah, I'm so grateful for it. Like complaints aside, it's completely changed my life. Like I'm so immensely grateful for it, because I don't know what I would do without it. Like life would obviously be so much more difficult. So
I know the answer to this, and I know that you do as well. But just in case and I'm sure by this stage the viewers and the listeners will also know. But microtia, you don't have a hole. So in your case, because you've got bilateral microtia, you don't have any holes. You just have the small pieces here.
yeah.
And so the bone anchored hearing aid conducts the sound from behind the ear. That's correct, isn't it? So what made you decide to not get another bone anchored hearing aid on is it the right side you don't have one?
I have it on my right side. I don't
You
have
have
it
it
on.
on the right side, yeah. So was there a reason why you decided just to have one, or?
Well, I think it was a mix of all of that. Like I think we wanted to like see how I would react to the first one, and then because the first one just had it just so much was going on that we just decided to stick with the first one, just and keep it as that. And we kind of like would reconsider it later on in life, but the procedure, even just to get it, all the other complications aside, it was such a like hefty set of procedures to do that I was fine with just the one. Like it didn't cause me enough complications or enough grief to not have it. So I was like, I can get by with this.
And Hayley, you mentioned a few times the word different, and I wanted to expand on that slightly because over the years, microtia, I feel, has been branded, sadly, a deformity. I know microtia is a disability. How do you feel about all of those things?
I think I'm neutral about it, to be honest. Like it feels in my eyes like it feels like a small little difference, but it does disable me to a degree where I'm hard of hearing, so I kind of just own it as a disability. But I try to not view it with like the negative connotations. Like it's just like anything else. Like it's just like a hurdle that you have, and like it is what it is. Like I don't really put too much weight on it being like a sad thing.
So when you were at school, Hayley, do you feel that you were supported by the teachers? Did you have to have any extra help from the hearing loss aspect, or were they helpful? When children were unkind to you, do you feel that you got supported enough, or could things have been done better for you?
Um, I think the things were as good as they could be. Like I don't think that the teachers necessarily like even, I don't think that I would ever even like bring it up. Like, I think that it was more so just a case of like kids being kind of crappy, like kind of mean, but I don't think that the teachers could have done anything on that end. But I know I did feel super supported. I had a caseworker that would come in, and I had I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was like a little microphone essentially that could connect to my hearing aid. So the teacher would wear that so I would be able to hear a little bit better. And my mom would always come in every year at the beginning of the school year to like talk to my new teacher and be like, my child's hearing impaired. So I'd always be at the front of the class so I could at least have the accommodations of like, I know I'd be able to hear what's going on for the most part. And my teachers I always found were really supportive about that. And we would always have like fun with the little microphone, and like we would make it like a quite a pleasant experience on that front. So in terms of like being supported at school, that I think was as good as it could be. It was like on the side of the teachers was great. And I thankfully I have such a wonderful support system at home. Like my family was like always there, and my
That was
mom,
my next question.
yeah. As I can now as an adult, I think of probably the emotional impact that had even on like my mother, and like seeing her kid going through this. Like I feel for her that she had to like witness all these things happen, but she was the absolute best. My mom would always just make everything so much more fun, and like she always made sure to make me feel beautiful, and like she really wanted to push me through these things and like make it better for me. And I don't think that she could have been any better about it. Like she like made every experience, even every like hospital visit, she made it fun. Like my family made it like nothing even mattered outside of that, you know. So I was really lucky.
I think that's really beautiful. And I do think, you know, you and I spoke about this yesterday on the telephone, that there's so much emphasis around what we look like. You know, we always forget. And that, you know, one of the reasons that I created this platform is not only to educate about microtia, but also to reinforce that actually beauty comes from within. It starts from within. And then, that's exactly what your parents did with you. I wanted to talk to you about the emotional journey, because you mentioned that you went through, you know, a lot of different emotions. Would you be able to just explain to us what that was like for you?
Yeah, totally. I think that it was a mix of like internalizing the like response from others in terms of like either being like bullied as a kid or whatever. And I think also I had a big like something I realized later on in therapy was that I think I had an issue with my like physicality, because growing up when you're different and you have no choice but to go through these procedures, which now I'm very grateful for, that I was able to like get my hearing aid, and I had my jaw reconstructed and all these things that at the time felt against my will and felt like I had to have things changed about me. And that did something to me like psychologically, where definitely like I had developed like pretty bad like depression and anxiety and like eating disorder problems, where I think I like really turned inwards negatively because I didn't know how to feel control over my body. I don't know if I'm like articulating this as well as I could.
You know, it's perfect. I understand it completely.
Because you understand from like a young age that like, oh no, like all of these things have to change about you, and it's all these like physical aspects where it's like, well, why am I different? Why do these things have to change about me? And they're not like simple little changes, they're like drastic surgeries, and that felt so like big and permanent, and something felt so wrong with me. So it made me feel like I had no control over my appearance,
And you internalized it.
yeah, big time. So that was a big thing that like had a weird impact on me. But
And how would you say you dealt with that moving forward?
honestly, a big thing that got me through a lot of it was I started getting into makeup when I was like 10, 11 years old, maybe 12. And that was the first time I felt like I had control over my appearance. And it wasn't even necessarily just to like feel prettier, but it was like, it felt like an art form that got to be tied to my appearance, that thus made me feel more proud of my appearance, because it was like all these things I was learning. And it was like the beginning of like makeup on YouTube. So it's like just diving headfirst into all these different tutorials and like learning so much. And that made me feel so much better, because it just gave me like an outlet. I think it was a mix of having a creative outlet, because I wasn't like a sporty kid. I didn't really have like those kinds of hobbies. So I finally had a hobby that I could express myself. And it was like, look what I can do. And it made me feel pretty. So that was like an initial kind of step that made me feel a little better about it.
Prosthetic ears. Let's talk about prosthetic ears.
Oh my God. I have them in a little box.
I've got a story on prosthetic ears.
It's crazy. And now it's like so fun. It's like a party trick where I'll hold them around like in my ears. But I started wearing prosthetic ears when I hit 18 or so before I went to university.
So
And that
just
was
to pause you there quickly. So from when you were born up until you were 18, you decided, I am who I am. I know you mentioned that you did internalize it and you dealt with that in your own way. You got into makeup, which you know helped with your creativity, and then you hit 18, and then so what made you decide to go down that route?
I think I just didn't really know it was an option that could be delved into. And also, I think it was a mix of a couple of things. I don't know if it was like a resource I knew was available to me. And I had so many other things going on in terms of like, I'd mentioned I had my jaw reconstructed, and that was like a set of huge procedures that took so much time and like prep for. And there was always either like a new surgery coming up, or there was so many other things medically going on that this just didn't feel like something to focus my energy on. And like you're busy, you're like graduating high school and you're like you've got all these things going on. So then in that summer, I'm forgetting how we even like got to the lead up of diving into the medical prosthetics, but we had to like come to that conclusion. And it was honestly the best thing I could have done for myself at that time, because looking at them, like you could clearly see the difference, that there was like a line where the prosthetic ended. So they were clearly not real, but it did this like psychological, it took away the fear of my ears essentially, where it was like, okay, there's kind of something disguising it, so from like far away you're not going to notice that this thing is different about me. And it made me just like let go a little bit. It was still a big insecurity still, because you could tell that they're fake, so if someone's close up enough, the conversation could still come up and you could see people noticing. But it just taught me to like let go a little bit. So I wore them for all of university. So I wore them for about 4 years. And this was like a huge transition period for me, where I went to an arts university, which I think made a big difference. I went to OCAD in Toronto. And I think being already surrounded by so many different kinds of people, like you're at an arts university, like people are doing everything and from all walks of life, and everyone was making art about it. And I think that that mix of like the prosthetics to kind of be my crutch, and then to be in this environment that was like so expressive and so different, really like shot me forward to just be like, okay, like I'll be fine. And then after I graduated, um this is now like 2018, 2019, I started posting about my ears online. And I took a trip to LA with a friend of mine, and we went to all these like makeup parties, and I was like being photographed, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this without my ears, without my prosthetics, I mean.
That
And
was
it was
the so
like,
that was the turning point for you when you went to LA.
yeah,
So during university, you wore your prosthetic ears. So that's what, 4 years?
it's about 4 years.
Always. And did you tell your friends at university that you had bilateral microtia and that you wear prosthetic ears, or did you hide it?
Um, no, I started to become quite open about it. I even like I made a few like projects about facial differences and like about my ears, so I became more open as time went on. But it was never like a point of contention. Like it was kind of like a very casual conversation always, which I think also really helped. Like everyone was kind of just like, okay, like it
And
was really,
it's almost like we again internalize how we feel, and we have this perception that people are going to think a certain way, but sometimes it's the actual opposite, isn't it? It's how we see ourselves is not how others see us. I think that's one of my favorite sayings. But so you go to LA. I would just love to know how did that flip switch from I'm Hayley, I'm hiding my bilateral microtia by wearing prosthetic ears. And then what was the turning point for that, where now I'm Hayley, this is me, kind of like it or don't? How did you get to that point?
I think I was a bit tired of them, to be honest, because although they were lovely and like really helped with my self-esteem, they were not all sunshine and roses. Like they'll get sweaty underneath if you put them on wrong. Like my ears still have all cartilage. It's like it feels like essentially clumped up cartilage inside. So if you put them on wrong, they would hurt. Like they were not terribly
Yeah.
comfortable. And I think the mix of like finally kind of building up my confidence a little bit, and like I kind of told myself, I was like, I think I want to get over using this as my crutch. Like I think that it's served its purpose. And because I knew I was going somewhere new, um I was kind of just like, I want to try. I think I brought them with me in case I like had a meltdown and
Oh,
like needed
yeah.
to report back. But I kind of was like, no, like I wanted to make this step forward. And that summer, like I'd gone to LA, I had this trip, and I was there literally for like 3 days. I went to like a bunch of parties and like met a bunch of people, and I was like, no, I'm gonna like solidify this as part of myself. And then I started a new summer job. And then I went into this new environment again where I was like, no one knows me as Hayley with or without ears. I'm just gonna like start fresh. And I kind of made the conscious effort of like, I don't want to like hide part of myself anymore. I'm like too old. I'm like, I don't care anymore. Like, I reached the point where I was like almost out of spite. I was like, I don't want to care. You know, like it's so exhausting to like be so upset about something I am not going to change. And it
And
sucks. I
so,
still here, but
and so when you decided to embrace yourself, and that's incredibly courageous. So you had your job. Would you wear your hair up then?
no, I don't think I'd gotten to that point yet. To be honest, actually no, I've started to wear it up a bit as of late. But I still do get nervous about that. Like I'm not entirely self-actualized yet. Like I do still get nervous.
Of course.
Um, like I'll wear my hair up obviously like around my family and around like my close friends and my boyfriend, but other than that, it's when I'm like out in public and you eventually start to internalize it, like maybe people are noticing, like that's still the hunch I'm still working to get over. Sometimes I'm like I'm fine with it, but it's not like an everyday thing. But
So when you were in LA, do you feel that people, if they did notice it, did you feel that they would stare at you? Would they have a reaction? Would they ask you questions? How was that for you?
I don't think people even really said anything, to be honest. And you know what? Maybe it's because, like, with Peace and Love, I was at like influencer events, and people are like, you're focused on yourself. Like, we all go to these things, and like, even how I am when I go to like influencer events, like, I'm focused on me. I'm not really gonna notice what somebody else is doing or if someone's like it's a little bit very selfish.
I
So
think it's
maybe
great.
it's the perfect environment for that, to be honest. So everyone's too focused on themselves,
And I
which
think actually, influencer or not influencer, we should all just focus on ourselves. You know, the way I look at it is we are perfectly imperfect.
yeah,
That's it. There is no such thing as perfection. And that
yeah,
would be so boring as well.
exactly. Now it's like it's so much fun, and like we were talking on the phone, but I've recently started to like kind of bedazzle them, and I'll wear like makeup on my ears, and I went to my last couple influencer events like that because you like it's also I take it as a uh an opportunity to like show people and kind of like not pedestal microtia, but like it's showing someone like it's something new for everybody. No one really knows what it is. So it's kind of like a nice way to be like, hey, like this is something new and expose people to it. And it's honestly been really lovely. And I have like a couple of like my really close friends that I go to these things with, and they've just been like really cheering me on. And that's been really helpful too, to like be at these things and to feel really supported. I always go with like two of my very close girlfriends, and they've been like really hyping me up through it. And I think that to feel the support in the community where I'm typically quite nervous has been really nice.
Did you ever have there ever been any moments throughout this whole journey that you've considered the possibility of having reconstructive surgery?
Yeah. Well, no, we've been looking at the opportunity or the possibility of it since I was very young. Um, but I don't know, it always felt like a big change and it never felt like quite what I needed at the time yet. Like it never we would look into it for sure. Um, sorry, I'm so sniffly. Um, yeah, but it never felt I always kind of would like pull back a little bit because it just felt like such a permanent change. And although my crochet has brought me obviously like a lot of hardship, like I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it felt like part of me that I didn't want to let go of. So not only did I look into reconstruction, um, there was another procedure where I was looking at getting done where they essentially removed the ear completely and then they put little implants down so I could click on prosthetic ears and they would be a lot more seamless. And that also felt so permanent where I was like, I don't want to remove this part of myself that I have this odd love-hate relationship with. And it just feels like such a pivotal part of me that I didn't want to let go of it. And now I'm glad. I'm happy that I reached like the point that I'm at now and I have embraced it. I'm sure I would have been happy either way, I think, but that's why I'd never taken that route.
So your parents, I know that you've told me that they were incredibly supportive. How did they, when you were born, and did they look into the options of what were available for you? And, how did they feel about everything? And why did they decide to let you make your own mind up versus doing reconstructive surgery when when you were younger? I believe the reconstructive surgery age is, say, 5 or 6. What was the reason they decided to, get you to wait until you're older to make your own decisions?
They they let me have a really open dialogue with them about it. Like, they obviously cared so much about, like, my comfortability and what I wanted, my body still at the end of the day. And I think also because there was just, like, other stuff going on, like, the bone anchored hearing aid surgeries took up a lot of time and, like, so much precedent, and same thing with the jaw surgeries. And those I had no control over. Like, those kind of had to be done, because it was impeding on my life. I had to get the hearing aid. And at the time, I'm, like, a small child, and I'm afraid and I'm angry about it. But just because I don't want to go in for the surgeries, I was obviously so thankful to hear and to have my jaw fixed and all of these things. But obviously, as a kid, I'm, like, so deeply afraid, and I was having, like, panic attacks later on because I would, like, smell the anesthesia smell, and it would, like, trigger something, and it brought me a lot of panic. But still, I'm thankful. But I'm totally going on a tangent. Either way, there were things I didn't
No,
have
you're not.
control over. There was procedures that I had to get done, and they just took up too much, like, so much time that um it just never felt like as pressing as the other things that had to be done.
So you're doing makeup. I mean, for those of you that haven't seen Hayley's amazing work, you should check out her Instagram,
Yeah.
because you did touch on this, but you decorate your ears. So, like, I don't know, you might have like a blue eyeshadow or a silver eyeshadow, and you put the blue on them, and you're really embracing who you are. And I think not just anyone with microtia watching this, but anyone in general just could take so much from your story, Hayley, because you've really gone through this journey of up and down, and here you are, and you're just being really authentic and true to yourself and embracing what you were given. And I just think that's just so admirable. And I know that a lot of people listening to this will be, you know, parents who've just had children with microtia, and they will find your story not only inspiring, informative, and all those, just all those wonderful things that you've shared, but they will be stuck in a, they'll be stuck in a situation where they will be asking themselves, should I allow my baby, or my 5 or 6 year old rather, to have reconstructive surgery or not? Or, in your case, let them wait until they're a bit older so that they can make up their own mind. What would you say to those parents listening to you today?
It's
What
so
would your
true.
advice be?
I think of how my parents handled things, and they did the absolute best that they had. The way that I kind of understand how they handled it is they really turned to whatever resources they had. And at the time, it wasn't much because the internet obviously was not what it was today. And thankfully, the hospital had connected my parents to, like, a couple other parents with children with microtia, so they can kind of see different children at different ages and, like, how they had kind of dealt with things. They'd met kids that had the reconstructions, kids that hadn't, and they just took it as, like, a slower process where they were really graceful with me, and um, they just didn't put as much pressure on it. And I think that they just kind of, I'm so lucky they just, like, loved me and let me just kind of, they were like, "It's fine." Like, if she's happy and if she's, like, okay, they kind of just, like, let me take my time. And I think it's just hard because sometimes I wonder if maybe it would have made things easier, and I can completely understand why some parents would want to have their, like, would wanna give that to their children because maybe it would have made things easier growing up. Um, but it's also a part of me that I really embrace. So I think it's, like, on such a personal level and, like, what people want, but I think that it takes some, like, maybe some soul searching, which is tricky because it's like, do you go through the trauma of, like, being the different kid and having all
Yeah.
these hardships? Because there's no real answer. I think it's, like, it's so dependent on, like, what you need. And I was also really lucky because not only did my parents really support me, but I'd become involved with an organization called About Face, and
What's it
I
called?
About Face.
Okay.
I believe that they're based in Canada. I'm not sure if they're outside of Canada or not. Um, but they're an organization for people with facial differences. And I became involved, I think, starting from the age of, like, 12-ish or so, 12, 13. And it was the first time I'd met people with my condition, but also like other facial differences. And I became part of this community of people that like lived their lives differently. And that like really shifted things for me as well, where I was like, I can exist like this and like I can be fine and like things will be okay. And like people are living their lives and they're happy. And I was meeting kids my age and older. And like that, I think, really put things into perspective for me to like see other people just like owning it. And I definitely was not there yet. But to see older people, for example, that were there, that were either like camp counselors or whatever it was, because they also had a camp, um, where I was like, hey, people can just be happy and they can have their differences and like that's fine. And I'd never really seen that until that point, and that like really changed it for me. So
And
long answer.
pardon?
That was a long answer. Sorry.
No. I always say this. More is more on this platform, because the people listening, they want to hear everything because they haven't heard it before, and so the more detail the better. So how was it, just quickly, because I am conscious of your time, but in terms of relationships, what were your relationships like? Were you really open about it in your intimate relationships? Did you feel that you embraced it and you were, this is me? Or is it something that you would, you prefer to get to know someone and then share that part of yourself? Or what was that like for you?
I've always been incredibly supported, and now like with my boyfriend, he like always supports me and makes me feel comfortable and beautiful and like, you know what I mean? Like it's never actually been like as much as I feared growing up, because I never once thought that someone would like accept this part of myself, and let alone like think I was pretty or whatever it was. It's been actually really lovely. I don't know what, I just got really lucky actually. Yeah.
Would you say that you've become more resilient because of your microtia?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's definitely like sometimes you don't know things until you've been through it, and sometimes people are too perfect and they don't know. And maybe I'm very envious of that, but yeah, incredibly so. I think it's taught me like you really understand like the hardships people go through. I think when you've like been the other, you've been the different one. Because it teaches you tolerance. It teaches you like how to treat other people, because I know how to not. Like I know what sucked, and I know the feeling of being so uncomfortable and wishing that someone had taken the time to make me feel more comfortable. So I think now maybe I like overstep a little bit, but like I'm such a maybe a people pleaser, but I always like I'm hyper aware of making sure everyone's comfortable, because like you know what you've been through, and I think it makes you just a much more tolerant person. And I think as an adult now, it's like I just want everyone to be comfortable, because I'm comfortable now and I want everyone else to feel the same way. Everyone deserves to just be like comfy in their skin, and whether that's through like trauma bonding or like the trauma that got me here or what, but I just want everyone to like be comfy. And
Did you have therapy growing up?
like here and there, it like brief stints a bit. Maybe I think I just like self-therapized a little bit and just like spent too much time on the internet. I don't quite know, but I never felt like therapy. Like, was in therapy for something else when I was like 14, 15, and I kind of started to unpack things a little bit with my appearance and how things had impacted me, and then like kind of through high school and then a little bit later in life. But it was nothing ever like solidified. But I would recommend it, because the times I was speaking to someone, it was helpful. But
Hayley, I wanted to ask you as well, if an adult with microtia is watching this and they were considering, whether to have surgery or not, what would you say to them?
yeah, see, I think it's different if it's like a child or an adult. I think as an adult, if this is still something that's like really impeding on your life and on your happiness, I think it's something that's worth looking into for sure. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's your own happiness, right? And it's like what you need for yourself. Because at this point in my life, I don't think that would be something that would make my life any fuller. But say if I hadn't turned out this way, and if I'd had a continually negative experience into adulthood, I would have absolutely looked into it. You know what I mean? But it's so personal.
It's so case by case. And from doing this podcast, one of my biggest takeaways actually, which I'd never really thought about, was is that actually, there are some people that have had surgery and then they haven't really doubted it, but they might have made a different decision if they'd done the work on themselves first. And I think that's one of the things, isn't it? Is if you do the work on yourself first, there might be a huge case in point that actually you won't ever get to that place in your mind where you feel the need to do that. And certainly this platform is absolutely not a platform to promote surgery. It's the opposite. It's to give viewers and listeners all of the options available to them. But I do think mental health is really important, and how you see yourself, and self-worth and self-love, and how you feel.
Yeah, I think it's so case by case, and I really think that like all the factors that led me to this point made such an impact. Like the mix of like finding my passions in makeup and in all of the kind of like aesthetic things that have made me feel better about myself, and then being so supported through family and friends and partners, and like it turned into something really positive for me. But I was so lucky in that, and I know that not everybody gets that. So it's whatever you need at the end of the day, right? But it is a big thing to take on. And like I said, in my case, like I really identify with it, and it's like I think it's a big part of me. So like I've embraced it now, but I'm 27 now, so like it's taken some time. Like if you asked like 10-year-old Hayley, she would have been miserable. So
Oh.
you know, but I think 10-year-old Hayley would think 27-year-old Hayley's cool. So that's all that matters.
Your parents must be so incredibly proud of you, Hayley, because there's been moments throughout this podcast, and even on the phone yesterday, I thought, oh, I feel like I'm going to burst into tears listening to your story. I think you're just amazing, really. I think I could go on and on talking about this. What are you most proud of? Random question.
I think I'm proud of like where I am now. I think that in terms of like how I like hold myself now, and the kind of like confidence I've built, I think I'm proud of like who I've made myself, which is a factor of so many things. But I'm definitely proud of that. Which is I feel like
And
that's a vague answer, but
no, it's a great answer. And what's next? What are you up to? What are you doing in the next 6 months?
well, I work in social media, and I've been posting a lot of about my crochet and all of that, and I think that just continuing to pursue that, like work on the freelance side of things and post about it as much as I can, taking on these like podcasts and like speaking really openly. I really enjoy doing that. And I would like to kind of devote a lot more time to being able to be open and kind of share my story and kind of educate people on what my crochet even is. That's definitely where I'm looking towards. It's making
I'm all about microtia and helping other people with this because, and I know you mentioned this as well with your parents, there is not much around in terms of information. And usually when parents, they look, say, they go on Google, or they might go and see a specialist, it's just not enough to really help you. Just in terms of knowing everything there is to know about microtia, and thankfully this platform, I really hope, will assist with that. And I know that definitely your story will help as well, because it just shows that we can act like microtia can hold us back, but actually it's not the case at all.
Yeah, of course. I think it's just hard because it's not so incredibly common that people they see it and they don't know what it is. And I always like my heart always goes out to these like young new parents, because I know that we mentioned this on the phone, but like I think of my parents when I was born, and like the internet wasn't what it was, and like they had to like really try to meet people, and it's not like there's a ton of us. And I like it means so much to me when I like get parents in my DMs now, and like there's a few moms that like will send me questions, and like that always means the world to me, to like, because I just think of my sweet little parents and I'm like, I think they're afraid, they must have not afraid, but like they want what's best for your kid, and when the resources aren't there, that's like so daunting. So I absolutely love what you're doing with this platform, and I love when parents are able to like ask questions and stuff, because I think it's like so fulfilling, and like they don't have to be alone in it. I know it can be so daunting, and you want to do what's best for your kid.
And that's why I'm so grateful as well, because, as a collective, it isn't just me. I'm just putting this together, but I feel like as a collective, we've all come together, and we're helping you guys to, just make your lives a bit better. And Hayley, on that note, I want to thank you really sincerely from the bottom of my heart. And words can't describe how incredible I think you are as a woman, and how you've overcome so much, and where you are now, and the brilliant attitude that you have. And again, I'm eternally grateful for you sharing your story, and I know that the listeners will also be extremely grateful for you. And it doesn't stop here. The work keeps, we have to keep doing the work. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Honestly, everything is so mutual. I think what you're doing is amazing, and this has been such a pleasure. So thank you so much for having me. I've loved this so much.
Just one quick question before we go. If the listeners would like to reach out to you, what's the best way? And then I can link it in the show notes below.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram or like any of the main socials. It's at Hayley Elizabeth MUA. My DMs are always open for questions or a quick hello or whatever. So you can find me on all the socials.
Guys, I will put all of that in the show notes below. And Hayley, all the way from Canada, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Here are your Sasha Says moments from Hayley's episode. Number 1, learning to embrace yourself takes time. Number 2, support systems matter. Surround yourself with those who encourage self-acceptance. Number 3, having supportive parents is crucial. And number 4, open conversations help normalize differences and educate others. And that's it on today's episode of Sasha Says. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Your support means everything to us, and I will see you next week.